Welcome to Beaver Tracks, a damn good podcast where we bring you inside the world of Oregon State University and share behind the scenes of what looks like to be a part of Beaver Nation. I'm Maddie Fetter, an admissions advisor based on the Corvallis campus. Thank you for joining us all here today. And our special guests are going to be coming from the Special Collections and Archives Research Center, Julie and Ashley. So I think just to go ahead and open this up, I would just love to hear, a little bit of an introduction, something about your department, and just how long you've been at OSU for.
Sure. So I'll go first. My name is Julie Judkins, and I'm the department head of the Special Collections and Archives Research Center, which is based in the Valley Library. We're on the 5th floor of the Valley Library on campus. And we call, just if you don't want to say the full name, we call our department SCARC for short, if you want to say that during our conversation. And I have been at Oregon State for about 3.5 years now.
Very nice. Very nice.
And I'm Ashley Williams Clawson. I am the head of archival processing in SCARC here in Valley Library. And I've been at OSU for almost 1.5 years now.
Very nice. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining with me here today. I would love to hear obviously more about the current project that you guys are working on, which, spoiler, is going to be about our beloved mascot. But I would love to hear maybe a little bit, just like a quick second or two, about what kind of got you into your background or field, the work that you do at Oregon State University, as well as just contributing to the bigger archival work across the country, is what kind of inspired you to get into that field? Or was it like a professor, a major, or something like that? Anything in particular that stand out for both of you?
Sure. So for myself personally, I majored in English with a minor in history and was interested in both of those topics. I went to Willamette, sorry to say, not Oregon State, but I hope you'll forgive me. And I was interested, thinking about what I wanted to do, maybe museums, knew that I wanted a career where I could keep learning. And so academia seemed like a good fit for that. Knew that I was really interested, and this is where the English major comes in storytelling and investigating things like that. So working, I thought, my family were big library users growing up. And so I thought, well, maybe something in libraries. And it was at that point that I realized that being an archivist could be a career. So I pursued a Master of Science in Information, which is like the new gen or next gen, excuse me, kind of library degree. Library schools have rebranded as information schools. And that's just one path to becoming an archivist. And, spoiler alert, Ashley will have a different path. But I got my degree from the University of Michigan and was fortunate to be able to work at the Gerald Ford Presidential Library on campus.
Oh, very nice.
Which is actually a federal agency, part of NARA. And then I also worked I had an internship on an academic campus at the University of Texas. So got some experience there. And yeah, haven't looked back. It's been a great fit.
Awesome. Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And what about you, Ashley?
So mine actually goes back to childhood. My mom and I started doing genealogy when I was 7 years old at my request. And from then on, we spent countless hours in archives and town halls and libraries across New England, doing research and going to cemeteries and finding all of my ancestors. So I was actually doing as much research as my mom was, which surprised a lot of people when you have this 10-year-old show up and you're like, what are they doing? And I'm just working as hard as my mom is. So that's kind of where it started. And I can't tell you exactly when, but it was through all of this that I knew I wanted to work in an archive or a historical society, something along those lines. So in college, I was a history major with a double minor in historic preservation and photography, which actually plays really nicely into this. And then I went to grad school for public history. And while I was in grad school, I worked at the university's special collections. And that is when I truly fell in love with archival work and knew that that's what I wanted to do for a career. After grad school, I worked at a university in North Carolina. I worked at an independent research library in Delaware. Nice. And then I moved out here.
Very nice. What did you get your graduate degree in?
My graduate degree is in public history.
Oh,
So
okay.
that covered archives, museums, historic sites, cultural resources management. It kind of covered a lot of different things.
Very nice. So one reason I touch upon that too is 'cause I think it's so interesting that, within academia, how you both are in a similar role and position, but kind of had two different routes of getting there, but still that same passion that's obviously coming across to me, which is phenomenal. And thank you both for sharing that. I really appreciate it. But now I really want to just talk in excitement about what you guys have been working on recently. I mean, I think this is something that points obviously not only to Oregon State University's history as a whole, but even the state history as far as our beloved beaver animals. So I would love just to hear a little bit more about what kind of sparked this idea or what made you guys want to kind of take this project on. And feel free to say the nuts and bolts as far as the title goes and all that fun stuff.
So we don't have a title quite yet, but our fall
Jump.
exhibit in SCARC will be about the OSU mascot and a little bit of school spirit history. We get a fair number of questions, reference questions about the history of the mascot, but I'll turn it over to Ashley because it was really her idea to do this exhibit.
Oh, very nice.
I think mascots are something that everyone is familiar with and can relate to on some level, be it from your high school, your college,
Yeah.
whatever, or from living in an area that has a mascot when you're thinking about schools. I mean, you can apply this beyond schools to advertisements,
Mhm.
different companies, and all of that. So I think there's a broad appeal and interest in mascots. When I was in grad school, we actually did an exhibit on the history of the mascot at the university I was at, and I was just so interested in how it evolved. And
Mhm.
so coming here, seeing just Benny Beaver everywhere, and everything has, beaver in the name. Yep. That I thought that could be a really interesting topic, but kind of a twofold of not only do I think it's interesting, it was a way for me to start to learn the university's history. I'm new to the university, I'm new to the Pacific Northwest. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of dig into some of this. Um, but also just, how do we get from a mascot being a live coyote named Jimmy to
Yes.
Benny Beaver, and then looking at Benny Beaver himself, his evolution, that when he first was introduced, his behavior was based on a rodeo clown, and that wasn't always perceived well. There were some students who were like, inappropriate
Yeah.
behavior. Like, can he not like taunt the other team so much? Um, to now, Benny is such a beloved figure and is taking, pictures with kids, and they all go running up when they see him. So I think it's a really interesting story to look into.
Yeah, very nice. And I think what you said too really touches upon the history of a mascot also too is representation of like the school spirit and what the school has kind of developed into, Oregon State, proudly largest public school in the state. So that's we want to live up to that title. And I think having such a rich mascot kind of just adds that fuel. I guess from a research perspective and kind of things that you started to look at when you've been looking at this project as a whole, like has there been any standout moments? I know you mentioned the origin of what our first mascot was, which was the coyote, but has there been kind of any like things that have popped up that you're like, wow, that was a really cool thing now that I get to know, or now we get to share to the overall student body and Beaver Nation?
I think for me, it's it was not as straight of a line to Benny Beaver as I had anticipated.
Okay.
There was a regent of the university who was also a reverend who would throw his hat in the river every time Oregon State beat University of Oregon in football. And so it's the sources vary, but whether he was a self-proclaimed mascot or whether other people called him the mascot, but he was the mascot for a while. And so it really did take a winding path to the beaver. I think being
And
Oregon
even
State and it being the beaver state, I think that it's
Yeah.
not It's not surprising that we became the beavers or referred to as the beavers, but yeah, I guess I would have thought growing up in Oregon that we always were the beavers, and didn't
Yeah.
realize that long history.
Yeah,
And I think even looking at once we were the beavers, just the Benny is not the first iteration, that there was actually two live beavers who were mascots
yeah.
in the 20s and 30s. They didn't last very long.
Yeah.
And then kind of a couple of stutter steps of there was a statue, which may or may not have been taken by another university and destroyed because it was paper mache, to someone dressing as a beaver before what we now know as Benny. But then just all the different evolutions of what Benny looked like. Yeah, I agree with Julie that it was not as straightforward as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that just goes to show how, rich a history can be, even if it is just looking into what we now know to be is our furry, lovable friend, and his fiance, I believe, is Bernice.
Yes.
So, how that has developed over time is now, even mascots can find true love at the Oregon State
And
University
a
campus.
little bit of a teaser to come check out the exhibit. Bernice has not always been his girlfriend.
Interesting. So there you go. It just the plot thickens and gets even better. And I think even too something it's so interesting talking about like live mascots is because we could look across the United States and there's some universities that still bring out live mascots as part of it in addition to a costumed mascot. I guess I have to ask for the Oregon State community, is there any chance do we think that a beaver mascot, a live beaver, will be ever making a return to the Oregon State community? Probably not. I'm seeing some
Why
head.
not? Yeah.
No, no, I believe beavers are now protected. So I
Yes.
don't think we will ever be seeing a live beaver mascot at a game.
Yes, yes, I do agree with that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask for the community because I know they are very lovable, and very much a favorite animal of not only many on our campus, but many across the state. I think another aspect too, just even kind of talking about archival work and why it's so important, I would just love to hear kind of in your own words, Oregon State's been around for a decent amount of time here. But why do you think it's so vital to have archival work present on the OSU campus as far as like being able to contribute to the community in the long run? Like, why is this role and this exhibit so important?
On a basic level, the archives of the university that we collect preserve the past and history of OSU.
Mm,
Our university archives tell the story of the university and help our campus community, specifically students, connect with the legacy of this institution. But we don't just collect university materials. We're also known for our collections on hops and beer, multicultural communities, natural resources, and the environment, Oregon history, oral histories, rare books, and the history of science. Special collections like ours are vital resources to enhance teaching on campus.
mm,
We see a lot of classes that come and visit us
awesome.
and use our resources. We often receive feedback from students and professors that primary sources that we steward augment their assignments and open up possibilities for learning by contextualizing classroom topics.
Mm,
We also offer encounters with the physical world, with physical objects that are increasingly missing from the classroom environment.
mm,
And I think that's something I knew that was going to be an aspect of my work. But since I was in library school, 15 years ago or so, it is just exponentially that's become more and more important. And I could not have anticipated just how hungry students and faculty are for that physical component of classes since so many books like in the libraries we carry a lot of ebooks because those are more convenient for students,
yep.
especially because we serve such a large eCampus population, and there's certainly a reason and a role for that. But special collections have just become more and more vital, I would say. And I mean, I know I'm a little biased, but I think that it really does connect us with an aspect that you can't get somewhere else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think even just to going off to that point is, Oregon State University known for its research, but also known for the hands-on learning opportunities. And the archives is just even able to take it that step further for our students. I think sometimes there is that misconception that you must be someone that is interested in history or the past or just wanting to get more data or information. But it's something for everybody because it's a part of a living, breathing system that already exists, being Oregon State, that the students' perspective already on our campus, alumni, they are actively contributing to what is the rich history of our university. And that's something that's worth documenting and also worth having facilities like yours to be able to bring that experience to students in and out of that classroom setting, which I'm so grateful for, on a personal note, but also for the students' sake as well, just be able to have those opportunities there. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about that. As we kind of begin to wrap up our conversation, I would just love to maybe hear if y'all had any advice for future beavers that may be looking at Oregon State University, or even maybe some ways to be involved in your office as a student. I'm sure you, like many, are always looking for some student workers or some passionate students to contribute. So I'd just love to hear maybe some advice or ways to get involved within your office.
Sure. So we do hire in the libraries in general, and we have really fantastic student jobs. So if there are students watching this that are interested in working in the libraries, certainly take a look at the website and apply for all across the library. There's, you can work on the front desk, you can work in the back if you like things that are quieter. We do hire in SCARC. We don't hire extremely frequently, probably just about once a year, usually in the fall when school is starting up again for the new school year. But keep an eye out throughout the year because sometimes students leave or, we have extra money that we need to use or, so certainly keep an eye out. And, you can always ask us questions too. Unfortunately, I will say sometimes we have students contact us and want to do an internship and we can't create those without a purpose. Usually we like to have a project and then find an intern and we'll advertise those. So unfortunately we can't accommodate that. But yes, we love our student employees and they bring so much value to the library. My advice to future beavers would be to truly explore campus and take advantage of all of the resources that we have. Some of my favorites, we have an excellent gym here with facilities. There's Prax where you can see wonderful performances. As a student, you get $5 tickets, but even like staff and faculty can check out a free ticket from the library. That's one of my favorite things that we do here at the library. So for one performance a term, you can get 2 free tickets to Prax, which is $40 or $50 usually for the faculty or staff rate. For students, it's $5, which is a steal. So you should definitely take advantage of that. But then also on campus in Corvallis, we're an arboretum, and I love walking around campus. If I've had a whole morning of meetings, being on the computer or sitting at my desk, it's just such a stress reliever to walk around campus. So that, talking about those natural resources, I think is a real advantage. But no surprise here. My top tip is to use the library and take advantage of our resources. All of our staff are committed to student success. We have subject librarians that are embedded in all of the colleges that you can ask questions if you need help finding a resource, if you need help, connecting with a tutor. We have a wonderful staff at the library that really, really are dedicated to helping students. And one of those ways that we try to help students is through our library of things. So of course we check out books, or you can come and use our non-circulating materials in SCARC. But our library of things has things like telescopes, park passes, calculators, noise-canceling headphones, both things that you can use in the library when you're studying, or if you want to go do something on the weekend. And that's something you can check out with your library card. There's no cost to you. It just always shocks me when graduating seniors say they've never been in the library. If nothing else, come and use our study rooms. or, use the library of things. I think that's one of the secrets of success on campus. You kind of touched on this, but I also wanted to mention that, while our materials in SCARC don't leave the room because they're fragile and delicate, you can check out books elsewhere in the library, but ours don't, just because they're usually one of a kind. You don't need any special reason to come use our resources. You don't have to be part of a class. You don't have to have an official research project or any official reason. We're happy to see folks. And you are welcome to come and stop by our reading room 10 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. If you do want to do research, we do ask you to email us at scarc@oregonstate.edu and make a research appointment. And that just enables us to give you a better user experience, pull the materials ahead of time, look up additional resources to help you. But if you want to call or stop by our office and ask what we have, we're always happy to have those conversations. We just can't always do research that very day. So I guess that would be my tip.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Ashley, anything else you wanted to add to that?
So I agree with everything Julie said, but I would also add, use this as an opportunity to try different things, try different foods, clubs, activities, classes. OSU has so many different things to offer. Like there's a water battleship tournament. There's pickleball, bowling, student-run media, including a newspaper, radio station, TV station. There's a creamery here on campus, which has delicious ice cream and cheese. Be sure to check that out. There's clubs ranging from ballroom dancing to art history to matcha enthusiasts. And then there's classes on color innovation, Native American assimilation and activism, food and American culture, study of peace and the causes of conflict, food and beverage fermentation, and a class that explores gender, race, class, and sexuality through Disney animated films. So I will also add that there are so many resources on campus as well. As Julie said, I would be remiss to not mention the library, but there's a basic needs center, counseling and psychological services. There's cultural centers, a health center, academic support center, that we want every student to succeed both in and outside of the classroom.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's really what it is all about. I feel like here at Oregon State University is just giving that all-encompassing, all supportive experiences. And that's not only in the academic and professional aspect, but personally, we want to see all of our students succeed. And, I know because of your guys' work within the Special Collections and Archive Research Center with the library in conjunction and all these other great resources that they're providing that for our students. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for everything that you do for our student population. And I want to say thank you for listening and joining me here today. I appreciate your time. I'm Maddie Fetter with Beaver Tracks, and this was another damn good podcast. Go Beavs!
Go Beavs!
Go Beavs!